Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's watch.
For all these years without your support while you were deciding what you were doing without consulting me.
Do you know what? Let me tell you what. No. You stay and talk.
I'm done listening to you.
You stay and talk.
No. I'm not going to because you're not listening.
You're not listening to me.
And I'm not going to.
Okay, so we're done.
Goodbye.
You. Shut it off.
Okay, so this is where we left off. So let's see what happens after this. Maybe he comes back. Actually, hopefully he doesn't in this state.
I had gone into this conversation wanting to keep it logical, and I figured we would take this step by step. But really, truly, I don't think he's looking for an excuse. We were throwing accusations at each other about what's going on, and it was shocking. It was shocking. I was really upset when he left because it feels like there's a finality to it. And
Okay, there's that word, finality. So yeah, she was saying in the blog or selfie video that she thinks that he's trying to push her away, right? Trying to, what did she say exactly?
And I figured we would take this step by step, but really, truly, I don't think he's looking for an excuse.
Right, he's looking for an excuse to break up with her. Yeah, it very much looks that way. I mean, it's hard to interpret any other way. There's the other hypothesis, or, in addition, that he has trauma regarding betrayal from his childhood, and he is overly vigilant and overly sensitive and overly interpreting of other people's behavior as betrayals when they're not.
But just the feeling was like, we're done. You keep cutting me off.
There is no interest in understanding each other here. There is only a bitterness that has no place.
I didn't comment on this when I saw it the first time, but that word bitterness has a sexist and misogynist ring to it. I don't know if it is intended to be that way or a reflection of that. And if so, I don't know if that's coming from the online forums that he was a part of, that he talked about. But I just want to point that out. I would imagine Janelle is the least bitter. I wouldn't call any of them bitter. I might call him bitter, actually.
It took me about a half hour to kind of overcome the shock of the conversation. And I called him and I said, come get your stuff. So in my mind, he is out of the house.
Interesting. So she said that probably in a moment of passion. So I wonder if that sustained. These one-on-one interviews are happening, I think, months later, if not like a year later. So I'm not hearing anything definitive. But similar to Christine, there's a progression, as there almost always is when it comes to divorce. I've been with clients, individual clients, who will tell me, they'll come in and we'll have talked about their marriage a lot. And they come in one day and they just say, yeah, I'm done. I can't do it anymore, and I want a divorce. It's final decision, final answer. And then in the beginning of my career, I would, after some back and forth, would lock it into my head that was going to happen, But almost all the time, the first time I hear that from someone, that begins an egg timer, if you will, that it might even take 5 years. That's not uncommon for the divorce to actually happen, because it just takes a long time. There's so many worries. There's a lot of incentives not to. If you're not dying to date anyone else right away, then it's not really an urgent thing. So there's that. And also financially, she's talked about how she doesn't really know, if she were to divorce, how to manage the finances or the properties or life. She seems pretty on the ball and seems like out of any of them would be able to support themselves. Mary has her Airbnb, or not Airbnb, I think it's just a regular B&B. And Christine, they all seem competent, but Janelle seems particularly competent.
My children, I don't know who says that. Now he acts like, now he's flipped it and said it's all my fault. I don't recognize this man. I don't know who this guy is. Maybe this is who he always was. I don't know. but I don't recognize this very mean person.
Okay, that's interesting. We've heard other talk along those lines from the sister wives, and from the edit, it very much looks that way as well. And that's the question. Was he always this way, or did he change? Or both? Hard to know. I don't know. Do you know? What do you think?
Robin's in for a ride, and any of the other wives that stay with him.
We've never had as many problems as we're having right now in our marriage. He's suspicious of anybody being disloyal to him. He's directing that at me. It's like I don't recognize him. I don't really recognize him right now, and I've never seen him like this before.
All right, that's interesting. We keep hearing that, and I suppose some people might think that Robin is just saying that to deflect or to make it look like she's also a victim or something. But I tend to believe her, at least in part, because the way that he's acting, he doesn't seem well. So at home with Robin, it doesn't seem likely that he's all hunky-dory and happy all the time. So she also is saying he's different now.
Benevolence. I just want to be a for a little while, you know? I want to grow horns right now so bad. I want to say mean things. I want to be a jackass. It's just like this urge to just, be the ass she said I was. Like, oh, you think I'm an ass? Well, I'll show you an ass.
Yeah, this just has the look of someone having transference or displacement from childhood. I can't know, and of course, it's typical for a therapist who thinks the way I do to think that. But it just has that look to it, because there doesn't seem to be any reason why he is upset, especially at Christine and Janelle. There's really nothing. So there has to be something else, right? And it also just makes me wonder what kind of thought matrix is involved in that statement of, devil and good and evil and that rage. It just makes you wonder what kind of messages he had beat into his head when he was young. He seems to equate anger with the devil, or feelings of rage with sin or something. And I'll see that not only in the Christian world, or the Mormon world, I suppose, the general American Christian Mormon Catholic world, but also I'll see it in Seattle with people that adhere to Buddhist principles. There will be this way of interpreting it, and there's many ways of interpreting it. There's millions and millions and millions of Buddhists around the world, different groups, different ways of thinking. But the Seattle version that I've seen often is in opposition to anger. This isn't always the case, of course, and there's a lot of beauty and wisdom to Buddhism for sure, as with any religion. And what I've seen with people close to me and clients, that they were traumatized growing up and they have a lot of anger naturally, and they don't know what to do with it. And it has snuck out at times, and they've destroyed relationships and regretted it later, and maybe even been violent. I don't know, but that's not typical. And they try to rein it in, and they just can't. And they turn to meditation and mindfulness and Buddhism and detachment, which, there's a lot of wisdom to that. But what I have found is that it's a salve on the wound, but it doesn't really heal the wound. It reduces the symptoms, and it gives an ability to regulate maybe some of the times, but it doesn't address the original problem, which is the relational trauma. So I say all that because I'm just wondering, as he was growing up, because my hypothesis is that he was raised in a way to feel hurt a lot and betrayed a lot, but also was not given a way to assert himself. There's a lot of signs pointing in that direction. And as he was in the beginning of the marriages with Janelle and Christine and Mary, there were times when he was hurt and upset, but he had no way of being able to communicate it. and he just stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it. And it seems like all three of them, particularly Janelle and Mary, were also good at stuffing. So they had that going as a team. And then when COVID happened, and he was bonding with Robin more so than others, and he saw people scapegoating Robin, or he thought that, all of that anger just came pouring out. And maybe age or the fear, he seemed quite, for all of us, well, for most of us anyway, when COVID happened, the darkest corners of our personality were brought to the fore. I don't know about you, but, it exposed things about myself that I thought I had addressed and got rid of, just despair and terror and existential dread and, anyway. So for him, the way he talks about it's like, this devil and I don't know, maybe it's a common thing in the AUB and in the group, or common to broader Mormon culture, which is pretty broad as a category. For example, from what I understand, the Mormons in Salt Lake City have a different kind of culture than the Mormons in Seattle, in the Seattle area. Anyway, so what am I saying? I am glad that he has this friend. They've shown a number of scenes where Kody is talking with his friend, and Kody is getting his anger out, which is great. As a therapist, one of my big, often goals is to help clients to just talk about what they're angry about. Because not only are there messages in families, but there's a message in our culture that anger is bad and it's always evil. It's always destructive. Calm down. Don't be angry. Harboring anger just festers inside. What does that even mean? I guess if you fuel a resentment, then yeah. But like any other emotion, if you need to cry, you cry, and if you need to laugh, you laugh, and if you need to be angry, you be angry in a functional way. You don't be unfair to people. You shouldn't be violent to people. And sometimes, being angry means you vent. And, case by case basis. But this friend is a really good listener, by the way. He is perfect in the bits we've seen with Kody. He throws out like little wisdoms here and there, like, well, they were talking about certain metaphors that I didn't really understand what they meant, but he mostly listens, the friend, and occasionally is like, well, you just gotta try to look on the bright side, or you gotta put in the effort, or something like that. But I don't know. And it also just makes me wonder what kind of the other thing I'll say is that when people are depressed, it is a possibility, and he's talked about depression and anxiety, which often are linked and experienced comorbidly or together, that when one is depressed, one can become very irritable and talk like this. In fact, you can become so depressed that you literally believe that you're the devil, or that you're a demon. People will have psychosis, delusions, that they're rotten to the core, similar to like schizophrenia or something, but it's a particular depressed version. So there's a possibility of something like that, or in that direction. I don't hear any evidence of psychosis or thought disorders, but there's a spectrum there, and he's talking along those lines. It's also possible that he only frames anger as a devilish thing and wants to express his anger, so his only choice is to embrace evil, which, yikes.
The darkest parts of yourself.
And it's weird, I am.
Yep.
And I don't like who I am.
Yep. You're going to stare at the man in the mirror, and you're going to find out how big the horns are. There were things that I thought that I never thought I could think, and I thought them too.
Yeah, the horns, and I wonder what they're talking about, I guess. But yeah, when we are hurt and traumatized, particularly, I'll have clients that are the nicest people on the planet, but when they are safe enough, they feel safe enough to tell me, they'll tell me some really, it's not uncommon to have very vivid and extremely psychopathic and sadistic fantasies about harming other people. And in our culture, it's considered a precursor to a mass shooting or something, but it rarely is. It can be, and as a therapist, I assess for that, risks of that. But it's very common, particularly if you've been harmed.
Yeah, it's like a heavy, thick drive inside of me.
Yeah.
And when you talk about a gremlin, I got a gremlin inside of me, Nathan. I mean, the deepest temptations I've had in my whole life was to sit down and stop trying to be good. And that's happening to me now. And it's just devastating.
Yeah, I'm sure it's complicated. I mean, one simplistic way of looking at it is that he was acting good for the first 30 years of his adult life, and then the dam broke and now it's all evil or something. I'm sure it's more complicated than that. If I were to take a guess, I would say that he was enjoying his life and things are going well relatively for everyone. And he was holding things together in his way, and he was the hub, so he has to be always on. I've talked about just the fatigue involved in his role that I don't know if I talked about this in the first couple seasons, but I was like, God, this looks exhausting. You have to be romantic every night because each wife has been waiting for you and will not see you for another few days. So they have high hopes. I mean, at the very least, that they have high hopes, and you can't just kick back and chill. Like, you've got to be on, you've got to deliver. And, he's the one with most of the power, so it's not like we cry a river for him, but the pressure, and then all the kids, similar, and just, he has all the kids. He has so many kids. And he's working all day and blah, blah, blah. So first world problems, I guess, or I don't know if we call this first world, but AUB world problems, I suppose. So it's not like other kinds of problems. But, as a low-grade constant stress, that has the outcome of no anger that's being expressed. So I'm guessing that things are going well with this like constant buzz in the background. But since there was rewards for the suppression, the love and the togetherness and the fulfillment, then it was all worth it. And then at some point, because of the factors I've already talked about, it became not worth it anymore. The benefits were not happening as strongly. You could even just say because the kids, most of them had moved out. I don't think I'd realized just how many of the kids had moved out in one span of time. I had thought that a couple seasons ago that Janelle and Christine both had like half their kids at home, but from the sound of it, Christine had one kid and Janelle, sort of a younger kid, truly. And then Janelle had one kid that was like 17 and about to move out. So, and of course, Mary has been empty nest for a long time. So at the very least, the fulfillment of having that fun together time with the kids was just not there for everybody, including him. So it just makes you wonder if, I just had that breaking point, and the mechanism, the habit to suppress his anger and to say, well, just put it aside, let it go. Don't get upset. Don't have that negative mindset. Don't give in to the devil, whatever perspective we kind of were hearing that. But, as he was going through those transition years, it just felt like, why am I putting all this effort into pushing back the devil? It doesn't feel like it's worth it. I don't think I want to, or it hit a breaking point, or I don't know. And so, yeah, if he was my client, we would explore that metaphor, the devil, and maybe it's helpful, but I'm guessing it's not. I would offer, in fact, I've worked with clients like this before, that I will absolutely step into their spiritual world because that's the way they frame the world. And why is my frame of the world more valid than theirs? So we're taught and trained, and the value of a good therapist anyway is to enter their world, not impose ours on them. So most people are religious, so I have a lot of practice in that. Seattle is one of the most non-religious towns, but I think a majority of Seattleites are still religious on some level. Anyway, so I would enter his world and say, is it possible that God is actually asking you to be angry and it's not the devil, and that you were taught along the way a wrong message that God doesn't want you to be angry? I mean, let's ask God right now. What does God tell you about anger? What is anger? Why are you angry? Did God get angry? Did Jesus get angry at the tax collectors? Is there a place? It's not the devil. It's human. Why did God give you anger? So I would ask those questions with the hope that it would just provide some flexibility to his thinking. I wouldn't be trying to change his mind. I would be trying to change his mind about anger if it was tied to the devil, because that is not a helpful way of looking at things. And I think it is destroying him. I think it could lead him to do a black and white thing of just like, well, fuck it. Now I'm the devil. I'm out of God's grace. Fuck it. I'm going to hell. Whatever. I'll just be a complete dick to everyone because I am the devil, right? Because maybe there's a period of time where he's like really trying to stuff it and it's just overwhelming. And he's like, no, I need to listen to God. I need to be good. I need to be good. And then it just starts to bubble up and explode. And then he just surrenders. He's like, well, I guess I'm the devil, right? And that can't be helpful. I wonder if that's a part of it. It sounds like it's a part of it. Yeesh. All right. Well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.